Okay, so I was a scraping sander for 30 years from the late 60s to the late 90s, and then I decided I needed to find out how to turn without scraping and sanding and choking on the dust. And so one of the things I did then was join a club. Anybody that's joined a club has taken a step in the right direction because it lets you move along faster than you can on your own. The other thing I did then is I met Dick Singh, and I learned a lot of things from Dick Singh over the years, and I often think of the things I'm applying that I can trace back to him. One of them is you gotta have a micrometer anytime you're doing a demo. I learned that from Dick. I don't know what to do with it except put it on my notes so they don't blow away. So anyway, there are other people. Mike Mahoney and Ray Key were key in my getting myself going. What I'd like to do, what's a plate? Do you agree that this is a plate? Then we're done. Okay. That plate is 10 inches in diameter. It has a 1.5 inch rim. It's incanted, the rim. It is a flat inside for the food, of course. It has a 5-inch base, but there's an ogee under there to get to the 5 inches. Okay, so that's what a plate is. Platters are bigger. That's all we have to discuss. I put in here to permit adequate time for debate. If anybody thinks that's not a plate, that's certainly what we're talking about, right? Okay, so that saves us a little time. But I don't want that ogee business to come into play. Here's kind of an early plate, which has a lot of things wrong with it. Can we have the overhead? Or I can hold it like this. Oh, there we go. Okay, here's the overhead. Now you can see we started out with a rim, which is definitely not 1.5 inches, but never mind that. This is the shape that I was using at that point. So I had an incision for the chuck to hold it on that side. I had the rest of the material out to the 5-inch or so base, and then I put an ogee in there. And that's a kind of a fairly thin cross section to expect to hold together and not be warping and twisting and so forth. That's what Johnston brothers say is the right way to do it, but I don't agree with that. I changed my mind after I did a few plates. A few might be 50, and I went to this shape, which instead of doing an ogee here and thinning this section, I just went down to the table. Okay, now I have a wider base, a lot more sturdy, and that section there. So this is a kind of a guideline, and if you follow this guideline, the chances are you'll have a successful outcome. On the back side, this one here, I'm making that dimension there 1/8 of an inch less than the rim I'm planning to put on the plate. So in this case, 1 3/8, 1.5 inches. It isn't much of a slope. It could be 1/16 of an inch. It's not a good idea to make it flat, in my view, because if you fail in that effort to make it flat, it looks like a mistake. So if you put an incline in, whether you put a small one or a larger one, and the surface is flat, people can have a different opinion, but they can't say you did a bad job of it. So, if this surface that shows here, if this edge that shows is 1/4 inch, it looks kind of clunky. 3/16 is kind of a nice number. If you're doing a platter that's 15 inches, 13 inches, you could go to 1/4 inch if you're happier with the way that looks. But 3/16 is kind of a nice guideline for that. I make the recess for the chuck 1/8 of an inch thick, 1/8 of an inch deep, sorry, dovetailed. And I'm planning for for the thickness to be in the neighborhood of a 1/4 inch over that 1/8 inch recess. I'm pretty happy with 3/16. An eighth isn't enough. So I kind of shoot for 3/8 at this point, with the idea that I'll have that 1/4, or if I have some trouble resolving this in a flat orientation, I'll still have a possible 3/16. An 1/8 inch plate in that area, an 1/8 inch is a scrap. Speaking of which, I have such an 1/8 inch scrap right here. Am I open? Yep, cool, okay. So you can see here, I haven't taken out the center yet because I realized when I got to this point, it was gonna be an 1/8 inch or a little less by the time I got it resolved on the top and on the bottom. So I cut it in half. So you can see what happens. Let's see. Oh, I hung on the lathe. So this is my not available any longer wood fast dimension measuring device, and it's telling me that I have in that cross section right on 1/2 inch. That cross section is the heaviest, thickest part of this whole thing, and that combination of the rim and that cross section give a lot of rigidity, stability to the plate. So that's kind of a key part of the shape. If I went the other way, here's a case, just to illustrate the obvious, where the undercut here is more than this. So the plate rim is short of the undercut. And the result is quite a lot different cross section in that place. So this plate is going to be a lot less rigid than this one. And if a number of these things are used for, what are plates, fruit, whatever kinds of things you might serve, especially platter-wise, crackers, you're going to be pressing down on it to cut the cheese, okay? And that didn't even, oh, I got a snicker over here, okay. You're going to be pressing down on it, and you'd like to have that not be rocking on the 5-inch base that's prescribed by Johnson Brothers. So it makes it a lot more stable altogether. I'll take a minute to talk about this. This was made by Woodfast. It's a really nifty thing. I can measure the thicknesses, one of which is this 3/8 that's very important in my mind. Woodfast doesn't make it anymore. I'm not even sure Woodfast is out there anymore. Are they?
What's that?
Woodfast, are they still out there?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Woodfast is still there.
They apparently don't make this. So this is a great thing. The least great thing is it happens to be metric. And I can live with that, but I found a place, it's called Stone Creek Woodworks. If you look that up on the web, you'll find a device that does the same kind of a thing. It's kind of elongated. They make a number of the devices that operate in a similar fashion. The one that's kind of this size that they offer is $80. You might want to have a look and see if it's interesting for you to have one.
A lot of his are heavier than that
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, they are.
Make it a little nicer too.
They are way heavier than this, and they operate a little differently, but it's the same basic idea. You get it either metric or inch if you want. A quick reference to these things here. This is a fabulous piece of wood. Here I am with this fabulous piece of wood. I got it kind of early in my plate work. I, in some sense, ruined it by putting way too narrow a rim on it, and I included a raised bead, which was kind of a pain in the neck because this side's okay, but this side, it's hard to sand up to and keep this flat and then sand in the bead. Never mind. Instead, I undertook to incorporate the bead, and you can't see it there very well, can you? Well, I'll pass it around. the bead is incised in the corner of the rim. So it doesn't protrude, it's relatively easier to sand. It still has a nice decorative effect. And you can also do it on the back. Can't see it very well. I'll pass this around. Somebody comes up for it. It'd be great, thanks. Pass that on. You can pass this one around as well. Don't do that. Do what I told you. Okay, so first step here is going to be, and I've already done this, we're not going to have to take time for this. I've already cut the back out. I cut this an inch and 3/8 inch deep because I want the rim in this case to be, I'm sorry, cut it 1 1/4 deep because I want the rim to be 1 3/8 inches. This is only 9 or so inch plate. It doesn't have great utility perhaps, but it's bird's eye. So I turned it. I'm also at this stage cutting this recess 1/8 of an inch. I could live with less than 1/8 of an inch if I needed to. If I have a thinner piece of wood, if I get a 7/8 or even 3/4, I can play with it and make it work. If I got a 3/4, I'll probably use a glue block and not sacrifice any of that recess for the chuck. But the purpose of this orientation is to establish this undercut and this recess. And I'm mounting it on a hole, 1/4 inch hole that I drill in the center. And this is what do we call it? This is a glazier chuck, right? It has a really sharp screw. I think there are some of these out there that don't come with the same thing, but Craft Supply has the same kind of thing. You can have that. You have that way. I put a little spacer in because I can't adjust the screw as far back as I wanted to. But in any case, hold that. If it's a larger piece, particularly if it's a thicker piece, then I'll have a faceplate that I'll use. This is a Vic Mark chuck because you said they're the ones to buy. So I'm going to mount this in here. I want the hole, the recess diameter to be kind of close to the extreme of the chuck. I want to contact it in some significant area. I also want to leave a place where I can, in this slot, I can measure in the middle if I want to. So I don't want it to be too tight. I would get the measuring device in there, which belongs over here. Okay. Nothing too mysterious about this. It's a good place for those. Just a bowl gouge. So we don't make too big a mess there. Okay, generally, that's enough. Generally, I'll shear scrape that just to smooth it up. And I'd like it to be flat. It's not a contest for flatness, but I want it to be a little deeper. That'll do enough to go to, yep, okay. I'm not going to worry about the 1 3/8 with the first couple of cuts I make, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tool like this, I'm going to start it, give myself an edge, then I'm going to rotate the tool and move it in and push it toward the center. The last thing is kind of important because it's the start of the flat bottom, the last cut I make here. Okay. Now I can burn it. That did land on the rug. We moved the lathe back a little bit. I was hoping it would land there. Okay, I got a lot of distance to pick up there. Oops. That won't improve it. What did I do with that? Oh, well, that's fixable. It now has a little more of a incant. Still a good example of a rim. That's a handy cut for you make if you haven't mastered it. It's actually scraping, but it's at an angle. It's not scraping like this, it's scraping like this. And what you get is a little stuff, dusty, stringy stuff, and it helps rationalize the surface. Correct. That's good enough. Okay, and that's close to 1 3/8. So I wonder where I am. Let's see. A little more to go. That's better. Okay. There we go. 3/8 more or less. So this isn't the surface I want to sand. And as I take away more of this, this surface will not be concentric anymore. It'll be, concentric's the wrong word. It'll be concentric, of course, but there's going to be some twisting going on. There'll be some relief in the process. So oftentimes, I'll go ahead and sand the rim now, all the way to 400 grit. If it's cherry, I go to 600 because cherry remembers where it's been scratched longer than other woods do. So, but in this case, this rim will not, in fact, it's not flat anymore. It's got a bit of wobble in it now. You can't see it, but I can. So, I have a tricky little tool. I'm reverting to my scraper background. It's a scraped and sanded for 30 years. I'm gonna lay this tool in here at an angle, and I'm gonna shear scrape that until I don't have any unpleasantness from end grain, side grain, and so forth. So I'll start on the bottom, and I'll take not very much of a cut, because the objective is to not let it make a noise, not let it scream at you, because that means you're not cutting smoothly anymore. You've left some nastiness behind. Anytime you can hear what you're doing, it's not good. There, for example, but I can make multiple cuts if I don't get too anxious to be done. Don't quite have it yet. Went better during rehearsal. Okay, so that's gotten rid of what I don't want to have to sand forever to get out of there. I still have this whole surface to deal with, and this is the end of this this spot. So I've got this flat, pretend I've sanded it. I haven't done any sanding in here, but I've done a job of scraping that takes away the irregularity in that curve. So the next thing I'd be doing would be starting to remove the center. I have some of that center already removed. And how I've gotten there is by making a flat, cut, straight across cut, several times. I'm thinking 1/8 of an inch, not much more at a time, because you can tell by looking at the waist versus the cut that you're going pretty straight if it's 1/8 of an inch. If it's 1/4 an inch you're removing, it's pretty hard to keep straight. So 1/16 and 1/8 is pretty easy to cut straight, because you can look at the material leaving versus material cut, and it gives you a better chance. Because at the bottom, you want to be flat. The worst thing you don't want to have at the bottom is a divot. You know, you're cutting. You've got a limited amount of space here that you have to stay within, and you cut a divot. That's curtains. You can't fix that. If you have a bit of a dome, you still have life. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is cut too deep in the middle. So if you start to float up as you move across, that's not the end of the world. And I'm floating up. So I'm checking hey, I'll be darned, that's pretty flat still. Shouldn't have predicted it wasn't, right? Been better off if I'd shut up. At this stage of the game, I'm out here, before I got to this point here, I'm not so interested in checking the flatness every time. It's not a bad idea to check it, and if it's wrong, fix it right then. Don't say, well, it's sloping a little inward, downward, and inside, so I'll just cut a little bit more off the outside than I cut when I get in there. maybe they'll do that, and maybe you won't succeed at it. So my idea is to fix it then, because you know, at the end of this whole thing, you're still gonna have to fix it. So practicing it is not a bad thing. All of the cuts we make are practice for the last one we're gonna make. So it's a good idea to take advantage of that practice and not get too confident. I know I went into yeah, I got a little dome in there. So I can use this shorter one, see about where that dome starts. I'll come back here. That should be good. Close. Okay. I have, on purpose, selected this nice soft maple compared to that bird's eye hard maple for this part of the exercise. It's not an accident. Now, actually, I have, what I'm doing now, I should tell you, is I've gotten down pretty close, but this area right here near the rim is deeper than what I've got left here. I've got a little bit of what I call a donut. It's a different surface by a depth that's going to show up when I'm done if I don't get rid of it. So I have to start with the bottom of this is, see that, hear that noise? So this is the prediction that it's going to go out of whack. Because I took all that material out and it says, hey, I wasn't intending to keep living like that. I was happy when it was there. So I'm going to change my shape. It's not a race to make that cut. It'll be smoother if you're slower. I wonder where I'm at in the center. This is why I want a gap between the jaws, because I really want to see if I can measure. Well, it's not a 1/4 inch yet. So I can go ahead and take another pass here that looks like I have to take to get a little flatter with the whole thing. It's not too bad. I'm using this nice steel. If I had a 5.5 inch, I'd be happy right now, but I don't. So I'm using this flat steel to see if I can catch any space, and it's pretty flat in there, except when I get up to the edge here. And that's a hard thing for me to get at with these tools that I'm using here. But remember this little rascal here. If I set this or some other thing, I can, when you get to this point, you have to use tools you're kind of good and confident about. This is a Ray Key thing, which has, it's a scraper that used to be balanced. I've used it mostly on this side, so it's not balanced anymore. But it also has a really, really, I don't know how to show you this. Can you see that this is a very, very big round on the edge? not at all a square or a rough thing. It is made to sit like this at an angle and give me a chance to make a fine pass. So I'm going to use that to try to improve the space just before the curve. I have to move it more vertical as I approach the curve. That's probably sandable. Another tool I could use is this one. I can have it sit at an angle and take a little sawdust off and work it even further in the point. So this is a handy tool for basically a different purpose than the one I first used it for. I still feel a little donating area there. That's one of the things that's worth remembering is your fingers are really better at judging than your eyeballs sometimes, even if you have a helper like the straight edge. I can still feel a little space here that needs resolving. So I'm going to take one last cut, right? You won't learn any more if I play with that longer, so I'm not going to. I think it's pretty close to what I want to be. I'm going to sand that. I'm not sanding tonight, but I'm going to sand that with, I've got two things that I like to sand with. An ordinary one and this flat one, which is much more rigid and has a bit of a taper on it. And that lets me get inside that recess I cut here when I get back over to the other side. But it's meanwhile rigid and flat. So if I have a flat that I want to keep flat, why would I want to mess with this? Inside, I'm going to use this one because I have to sand all the way over here. And I'm just about ready to do that. But what I really need to do is test. What did I do with my sandpaper? Oh. Smoke them if you got it. Let's see. Okay, never mind. I'll use this. Well, you've all been wondering about my patented device, the DSR. It's made to have sandpaper on the top of it, and it's digital surface rationalizer. Okay. I can't quite use that because I forgot my sandpaper, but this is flat, and this is sandpaper, and the way you do it is do this kind of maneuver. It's not to sand it flat. It's to tell you where the high spots are, and then you can come back in and resolve those high spots with whatever tool you're happy with. Some people would be happy with a shear scrape like this, and working in just an area that you need to. This doesn't show. I'm going to pass it around, and you'll see that you can tell where the high spots are, and obviously where the low spots are. That's the benefit you derive with the digital surface rationalizer. It's available on my website. This is $69.95. This larger one is $89.95.
How do you know it's flat?
Sorry?
How do you know it's flat?
Well, when I know it's flat is when it all has the same look, the same texture. Everything is sanded. What I see now is there's some spots that didn't get sanded. Or maybe I should have used it sooner to instead of guessing where those high spots were. But there's nothing wrong with the sanding block. I like to round it over because I don't want it to, mess with that curve that I put in there and shear scrape it before. But I want to know where the high spots are, and this is a mechanical way to find out. And frankly, if you're close to it being flat, maybe it's useful to do as a sanding exercise. But most of the benefit in my mind is showing where the high spots are, where it's sanded, and next to it is a spot that hasn't been touched.
Don, is the lathe always turned off when you're sanding?
Yeah. I don't try to, this is more sort of a gentle exercise. If I do too much, I lose the benefit of it. And I want to work it a little bit into the edge, and I don't want to be actually, power sanding it at that point. So I use a flat piece of whatever size I need, and it highlights where I need to help smooth it out. So this is going around. You'll see, I think, somewhere there. There it is. I can't even see it right now with this light. Oh, I can see it more here. I can see where I think I need to work a little bit. And some of it's around the outside. But this is it's under quarter. It's around a quarter. And this part here is 3/8, like I said. So it's got, when you talk about the cross section of this distance here, which is a good 1/2 inch, plus this 1/4 inch, and then what we've got is going to make a pretty sound, stable plate.
Can you put that over do that and put it over the top? Yes, because that way she can see it from
Want to see the caliper?
with the caliper.
Oh, sorry. Here are the calipers. They're handy. I have no idea why. They work for hollow forms. They're not quite as, they're a little crude for hollow forms, but this outfit, Stone Creek Woodworks, has a variety of sizes and shapes that some of them are promoted for hollow form work. Then, let's see. Well, the last thing we do, this is my stronghold chuck. I bought this before Dick said to buy a big mark. And this does me up to, I think, 13.5 inch platters. Beyond that, I have to use a jam chuck, which is kind of a pain in a couple of ways, because for one thing, this isn't flat anymore. When I finish the bottom, it's going to be flat, because it's going to be the last cut I make. But I'm mounting it on this surface that's moved a little bit. And so when I mount it, I'm not trying to press it against the jaws and distort it, because it'll pop right back when I take it off. So I just want to, don't tell me this is size. Yes, it is. It's too small. No, maybe not. Yep, it's too small. I'm not going to change all the buttons to make that work. But this goes on here, and now I have to make bevel and angular cut again slightly to make sure that this outside edge is all that's touching. And when I get down in here, if I still have enough space, I can put a little bead in there. If I don't have enough space and have a couple of either demo beads or one that'll stick around on the shelf for a while, I'm not going to fuss with it that much. The thicker piece you have, the more you feel like you can take a little bit more for this incision, and therefore leave enough to make a bead.
How do you make the bead?
Oh, gosh, thank you for asking that question.
Repeat the question, please, for the people on Zoom.
How do you make the bead? Okay, you make the bead by using this, I think, I call it a pyramidal tool. Pyramidal tool. It's not really a pyramid. It's only three-sided. Pyramidal tool. Pyramidal tool. It's not really a pyramid. It's only three-sided. I think pyramids are four, right? So, but it's a sharp tool. Maybe it's easier to see from the top.
Would you move it over the banjo? Get over the white of the banjo?
The other way, the other way.
Yeah, over the shape or.
I'm not seeing what I'm doing. But, there we go. That's off the end. Oops, there we go. Nope, that's not it still. Anyway, I'll pass it around. It's pyramidal. It's tapered on three sides, and it's a pointed scraper which you can plunge in, and then you can turn it to do some shear scraping on that bead that you cut, because it's not going to cut as clean as you'd like. It's scraping after all. And I'm going to get some end grain in there, and it's not going to be happy about it. So I'll have to work back over it in a shearing mode, you know. And the result is from protruding into the side and out from the top and then connecting them, is that I have a bead that can be really under this surface in case I'm still sanding. And it'll give me a nice bead, and you've seen that in one or of the plates that went around the room. I think it's a neat feature. It's still kind of a pain in the butt to sand. You know, when I remember to bring my sandpaper, can't believe, I fold it in, it's an eighth of a sheet that I work with, and I fold it into thirds. And so if this were that folded into third sheet, I'll use the end to sand in that, down in that thing. I won't take the folded edge and put it in there, because that's gonna mess up my sharp bottom to that valley. So I'm using the end, and if I want to, when I'm cutting along, I'll whack off and get a fresh start with that sandpaper, so I can whack, 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 whack quite a ways and still use the same tri-folded sandpaper. And using that end keeps me from rounding out the bottom of that valley that I've imposed with this. It still is a fussy part of the process, because the wood isn't happy about being scraped in that fashion, but I don't think I could cut a bead in that orientation, frankly. With a gouge, that is, a spindle gouge, I don't think I can cut a bead. This works, and it's easily sharpened. Oh, that's the big secret. I think I got this from my friend that spells his name with an S-I-N-G. This is a hex nut, okay? And it has a hole drilled in it and a set screw. That's the extent of my metalworking abilities. I drilled a hole in that nut, and I put a set screw in it, and I lock it on there. And now I can put this on the corner of the tool rest and sharpen. I can skip one and move to the next one. I can use 3 of those surfaces to sharpen this triangular shape. And I must have, I just really did sharpen this before I came, in case I had a chance to use it, but I apparently moved the nut at some point, and so it didn't line up quite right. But when it's lined up right and you don't loosen it, then it's a way to repetitively sharpen that triangular surface.
Don, will a regular beading tool work on a surface like that? Have you tried that?
What do you mean, a round one?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, it's
Just scrapes like
it works on the spindle. Well, it works on the long grain, let's say, when you're in that spot, but it'll tear the tail out of the other grain. That's why this thing with the ability to rotate it slightly and give it a shear scraping exercise with the same tool. It's a little bit delicate, but it's possible. A lot better than having to sand it all. So I think this is the best way to do that job. Unless, do you have a different idea, Dick?
What's that done?
That inside bead.
I normally I go in there with the spindle valve.
Right. But none of the rest of us do. I agree, that would be nice, but my isn't great. I think my notes are covered up. I think I said, oh, finish. Oops. Because they sell better. Honey, what you gonna do with that plate? I don't know. I'll have to hang it on the wall or put it on the stand or something. We got any place to put it? Nope. But they're perfectly willing to buy a cheese platter, okay? And a cheese platter has oil on it. If I'm gonna put a film on it, which I sometimes like because I like to use figured wood, and figured wood is a little snappier with a shiny finish and oil and poly finish than with mineral oil finish. This mineral oil finish is Howard Butcher Block Conditioner, and it has in it Minwax. It has in it mineral oil, and in addition has beeswax and carnauba wax. And the carnauba wax kind of gives it a little more luster than you get out of just plain, certainly than you get out of the mineral oil itself. Mineral oil is a little dulling, you know. And I think the waxes, particularly the carnauba wax, give it some, a little more luster. And there's some benefit in water repellents that comes from the waxes as well. I mean, it never cures. You know, like oils in the varnished linseed oil or whatever, it never really sets, it's always wet. It has to be replenished, and when it is, if you use this, then you gain some benefit from the waxes as well. So I recommend for people to buy things, use this stuff. I did. I think you should too. It's not so unavailable. It's Rockler and Woodcraft carry it, but so do some Ace stores. It's on Ace's available products. Not all stores carry it. They can get it for you, or Menards carries it as well.
Home Depot.
Home Depot too? Ah, okay. So it's the thing I'm happy to use and say, use this again. You can go find it. You don't have to go to Rockler or Woodcraft. That's the product I've ended up using. One reason because of that availability. I might, for a while, I thought I wanted to use walnut oil, but you can't get it at Ace or local places. So I sort of moved away from that because it wasn't something people could use if they wanted to use some more. I think that's all I have to say, besides some really great jokes. Oh, I'll tell you a joke. I got this one. It's this is a great one. So, guy walks into his urologist, and the nurse says, hands him a cup and says, "Take this, urinate." He said, "Oh, thanks a lot. My wife says, even on my best day, I'm no better than a 6. It's funnier than that. I just told it badly. Huh? So, any questions? I don't think I have any. Oh, by the way, if there's any doubt, I found this. This is a pint. That's a plate. This is a pint. These are not arguable points.
I have a question.
Yes, sir?
Did you wipe that mic off before you put it away?
Sure.
So where do you get your wood for making platters?
Why would I tell you that?
I'm a beginner at what I'm.
I'm just wondering why you think I should tell you that. No. Well, I'm a little bit at a loss at the moment, because I got a lot of figured wood in nice dimension from Sycamore at, Hardwood Connection from Ken Birch, because he always had some really nice stuff that wasn't on the bottom shelf that you could see, that maybe it was on the top shelf. If you ask nice and were willing to pay a lot, that he might sell you. So that was my go-to place, and as he sold out, I went and got a couple of pieces that I'm happy to have. Otherwise, I kind of like to go to a sawmill, because when they're trying to fill an order for somebody that's building couches or something of uniform ordinary wood, and that couch builder isn't necessarily crazy about curly wood. They'd rather have straight grain. So they put that stuff aside, and they put it in their showroom, and they sell it to guys like me and you who are looking for nice wood. The only one I go to now that I can rely on much is Kettle Moraine sawmill. It's half an hour past Milwaukee on the interstate that goes to the left. And that's a good place. None of them are going to have necessarily always what you want when you go there. In fact, that's true. That was true of Ken Birch as well. I would like some curly maple, and I would go away with some interesting cherry. My motto is, if you see a great piece of wood, buy it, because you'll never find it when you're looking for it. And that's why we're wood collectors, along with woodturners, and because we need to have a stock of interesting stuff. And you can't always go get one when you need it. It's not a 2x4. So be more direct. I like the Kettle Moraine thing, although it's about an hour and a half drive one way. I've had some good luck in Woodstock. What's the name of that place?
Bull Valley.
Bull Valley. I've had some luck there. Last time I went, I didn't. So it isn't always a lucky place, but they do have, I think, a mill and a kiln. So they end up with some rough sawn wood, which can be an advantage because it's not already been planed into something that you don't want. You know, it hasn't been sanded and planed and everything else. The downside is you can't necessarily see all the figure, but great figure shows through even rough sawing. So you shouldn't hesitate to get that in. And thicker is always better. You can always thin it down. One of the pieces I got from Ken Birch is this one, which, yeah, you can see it's got a nice amount of figure there. It's too thick for me. I could make something else, but if I'm making a platter, and this is 14 1/4, it's a nice dimension for a platter. If I'm making a platter, it's too thick. And that's okay because that grain that I saw there doesn't carry through to this side. So what I'll do with this piece, and I did it with another one from the same board, is I'll mount it up and I'll thin it down. And when I thin it down, I'll get closer to where this grain started in the wood. So I'll end up with nice grain on both this side and this side, about maybe half or 3/4 of an inch down. And I can use that. I can decide to go down to 1 3/8 or something, or I can leave it at 1.5 inches, whatever I decide to do. But I'm gonna pretty well decide that this is the bottom And this is the top because it's got this sapwood in it. It was as wide as this board could be, right? Came out of the tree and here's the impingement of the sapwood. So ideally, I'd like to get this out, and that means it's at the bottom. The other thing I want to consider is how does the grain run? And I'd like to go opposite. I don't want to agree. I don't want to put my recess in this way. I'd rather put it this way. If the tree's going this way, I'd rather put it the other way. That gives me a slightly better opportunity to make things flat instead of having them choose to curve in the way that the tree did. That's not a universal issue, and frankly, if the wood is figured, if the wood has a lot of figure in it, then that seems to kind of cancel out some of that tendency to follow the tree, if you know, follow the rings as the growth rings went. So, but one of the considerations is where's the figure? I want it to show on the inside of my finished goods. If it's on the bottom and I can't see it on the top, I got some idea that it's going to start somewhere. I hope it's where I can still see it. I'd like to kind of counteract the rings. That's not my most important point. My most important point is what's the best show of the figure, because lots of people don't know crummy turning from a good turning. But everybody knows a pretty piece of wood. That's intuitive. Everybody knows that from birth or something. And so you can take a piece that's not so fabulous in the way you turned it, and it has a great grain, and somebody's going to buy it or be happy to get it as a gift. I don't mean everybody has to sell things. So that figure is the biggest issue, and I like to get rid of any sap grain that's showing. It either has to be a feature, so I can take it this way, and if I had a balanced sapwood on each edge, I might decide that that's appealing. I don't think so in this case, but so this was a bigger piece of wood, thicker piece of wood than I wanted. I can still make it work. I spent too much on it, but I got it. Yes?
I don't think ideally do you want the wood to be to start a plane or a ladder?
Well, if it's going to be sort of up to 12 inches or so, I'd like it, it's got to be an inch, frankly. I mean, if it's a really, really fabulous piece of curly something or other, I can do 7/8. I could even do 3/4 if I decide not to make the recess, but to use a glue block in that case. Then I gain some dimension there. But if it's going to be this big, I would, 14 inches, I'd like to have 1.5 inches. You know, in terms of what you can find and specify, 5/4 nice if you're going over 12 inches. But that's really only going to be, what, 1.125 inches. Bless them for coming up with that idea of calling it something you think might be 1.25 inches, but it's not. And that's the other advantage of rough sawn wood, is that it's generally sawed to a thickness that is supposed to yield one of those saleable 4 or 5/4 things. So you can often have more thickness in something that's anticipating being planed down than something that's already surfaced. And that's the disadvantage of some of the sawmills. There's a sawmill in Kirkland, which is kind of north of DeKalb. Thank you. Whoever said that. Yeah, it's north, but when I've been there, they haven't generally had the rough sawn stuff. They've sanded it down and made it look pretty. That's fine for them, but not so fine for me, because they've taken the thickness off that I would have been happy still having. So that piece, that big piece that went around, was 5/4, and that's about a 13-inch ladder, I think. This thing only does 13.5. So, any other questions? Great. It's an hour.